Namaskar friends, I welcome you back to week 8. This week 8 will talk about question documents and authorship disputes. There will be 12 videos in week 8. We'll start with video number 1 of week 8. It deals with introduction to question documents, especially when writing becomes evidence and language becomes a forensic tool. In this session, we'll discuss how written language leaves footprints. Friends, this week we step into a world where writing itself becomes a witness. Every sentence, every stroke, every punctuation mark carries intention, identity, and behavioral trace. Question document examination is where forensic linguistics meets forensic science. Whether it is a threat note or a suicide letter or any anonymous complaint, maybe a forged will or a misleading contract. Friends, written language reveals far more than people think. And today we will begin decoding how writing becomes evidence. Let's start with the understanding of question documents. Friends, a question document is any written or printed material whose authorship, origin, integrity, or authenticity is under dispute. It might be a letter that does not sound like a person and will with suspicious phrasing, a contract with unusual terminology, or a threat note meant to mislead investigators. In forensic linguistics, we analyze the linguistic dimension of these documents. Why? Because language carries the author's habits, author's biases, and author's subconscious patterns. Now, why forensic linguistics matters in document examination? To answer this question, let's discuss. Friends, this traditional question document analysis focuses on handwriting, ink, paper, and physical attributes. But linguistic analysis examines how an author structures sentences, uses vocabulary, forms collocations, makes grammatical choices, or expresses emotion. These patterns become linguistic fingerprints. When two documents share unusual linguistic habits, attribution becomes clearer. When a forged document suddenly displays a different linguistic rhythm, friends, at that time the suspicion increases. Now, how can we understand authorship through language? Friends, every writer leaves a unique linguistic trail. Some prefer longer sentences, others prefer short bursts. Some consistently misuse prepositions, while others habitually overuse modal verbs like maybe, probably, or must. Some writers prefer formal tone, others switch between conversational and structured language. Authorship identification begins with observing the stability of these features. When a question document deviates sharply from a non-writing profile, we notice the disruption. People often attempt to disguise their writing by forcing spelling errors, altering vocabulary, or exaggerating tone. But linguistic disguise is difficult to maintain consistently. A writer may fake 5 features but accidentally reveal themselves through 10 others. Friends, disguise collapses most often through unconscious patterns like habitual sentence structures, repeated function words, consistent misspellings, and preferred transitions. These are the quiet places where the truth leaks out. Now, when we understand the anatomy of a threat knot, we can say that threat knots reveal more than threats. They reveal anxiety, planning, literacy level, emotional state, and linguistic identity. Let's understand with an example. Threat writers often mix politeness markers with aggression. For example, please do not force us to take action, where they are blending both. They may overuse modal verbs to create pressure. Their sentence structure often shifts depending on emotional intensity. Friends, in many cases, comparing the knot with digital messages or earlier writings, it leads to identification. Now, if we talk about suicide knots, friends, linguistic cues of authenticity and manipulation can be revealed. Suicide knots must be analyzed with great sensitivity. Genuine knots often display emotional coherence, personal references, internal consistency, and linguistic authenticity. All these things tied to a writer's history. On the other hand, if we talk about forged knots, they tend to sound generic. They lack emotional depth. They over-explain events, or they may adopt unnatural language for the supposed writer. Courts have relied on linguistic analysis in multiple countries when determining the authenticity of disputed suicide knots. Friends, when we talk about legal documents, we can understand the hidden linguistic signatures in wills and contracts. Wills and contracts often display clear stylistic fingerprints of the drafter. If a will suddenly includes vocabulary, syntax, or phrasing not typically used by the testator, questions arise. Stylistic mismatches may suggest external authorship. It may suggest influence, or there can be post-execution alteration. Courts often examine whether the language matches the person's educational level or not, whether it matches with writing habits or not, whether it matches the non-communication style or not. Now, when it comes to comparison between typed versus handwritten documents, they may look different, but they are connected through linguistic words. Handwritten documents reveal spontaneity, typed ones reveal planning, but linguistic features remain consistent across both. For example, if a person consistently misuses commas or prefer a certain type of sentence structure, these features carry into typed communication as well. The shift between mediums provides additional clues. For example, some writers are more formal when typing, more relaxed when writing by hand. These shifts help differentiate genuine evolution of style from artificial manipulation. Let's understand with one case study when language cracks a forgery. In a landmark case, a forged will displayed highly formal vocabulary, unnatural for the deceased, along with linguistic phrasing, typical of drafts written by professional, not by test tutor. The linguistic patterns like modal verb usage, transition markers, we call it cohesive devices, and unnatural lexical density. These features, these patterns expose the forgery, and the court accepted linguistic analysis as supportive evidence alongside handwriting expertise. Now, let's discuss about common linguistic indicators of authorship mismatch. Friends, indicators include inconsistent spelling systems, sudden shifts in tone, mismatched punctuation habits, irregular use of functional words, unnatural lexical choices, and overly structured sentences from individuals known to write casually. These inconsistencies often point investigators toward further forensic examination, and that helps courts identify the manipulation. Forensic linguists provide expert opinions on authorship, linguistic consistency, stylistic deviation, discourse coherence, and overall linguistic plausibility. They collaborate with handwriting experts, digital forensic specialists, investigators, and legal teams. Their role is not to decide guilt, as I told you multiple times earlier too. Their role is only to analyze language scientifically and transparently. Friends, the very important sentence that I would like to share here is, writing remembers what writers forget. Because writing is powerful, because it records intention, whether honest or deceptive. Writing remembers everything. Writers may forget what they reveal unconsciously, but their language does not. I hope that you must have enjoyed this altogether a new avenue of question document analysis. We'll have lots of things to discuss in the coming time, right? So unless I'll catch you back in the next week, where we'll explore authorship disputes in legal and personal documents, where small linguistic fingerprints solve big conflicts. We'll continue strengthening your forensic eye and linguistic intuitions. So stay tuned with the course until I catch you in the next video. Till then, thank you very much. Namaskar.